I tried something I shouldn't have done, and that was investing in the stock market. And I had no clue what I was doing.
Mm.
I invested all my money in stocks and options. I lost it all, to be honest. Within 4 months, I lost all my savings and a lot of money I lent from the bank. So I was 2 million in debt. I was 20. The feeling that my life was over. I was completely lost after 20 years of really hard working, losing the money, all the shit what was going on in my life. I lost myself. I was deep down and depressed. So I had to take off. And it became a journey.
Michael, it's great to have you on Untangle today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Patricia. Hello
Yeah.
there. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. All the way from Spain. I love that. So, you've written this really interesting book about mastering your mindset, and we're going to do a deep dive into much of it as we
Mhm.
as we go along today. But I wanted to start with maybe share a little bit about your personal story and how you came to studying and writing and mastering your own mindset.
Yeah. Well, I've always been interested in mindset and the power of thoughts since I think I was 20 or 21 when I first read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I
Yes.
have to admit, before that, I'd never read any book before. In my high school period, I haven't read books. I wasn't really into reading. But then one day I was in Miami, in Barnes and Noble, and I saw this huge bookshelves with personal development and mindset, power of thoughts, law of attraction. I started reading all those books, and it really grabbed me, especially Think and Grow Rich. So from that moment on, I started studying a lot of Bob Proctor, Alan Watts, Esther Hicks, but also Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. I really love Wayne Dyer. So that's about 35 years ago already. Then I found some mentors. I went to lots of seminars, did a lot of workshops, did all my studies. And along the way, I developed in my own life. I had some problems when I was young in my private life and also professionally. I used to be a radio DJ and TV host in the Netherlands. I was on the Dutch MTV. I was very renowned as a DJ in my 20s, spoke to many celebrities, movie stars, pop stars in the 90s. And then one day I tried something I shouldn't have done, and that was investing in the stock market. And I had no clue what I was doing. Very important lesson: never do something you have knowledge of. So I invested all my money in stocks and options, puts, and I lost it all, to be honest. Within 4 months, I lost all my savings and a lot of money I lent from the bank. So I was 2 million in debt. I was 20. The feeling that my life was over. I had no idea how to solve that problem. It was a really, huge problem for me at the time. Also, as I mentioned, there were lots of things going on in my private life. What wasn't all really well. And then I met my business mentor, Mr. Dan Pena. He's an American entrepreneur. He was in oil and gas and was in a lot of businesses. And he taught me how I could start a business, how I could grow a business, what business life was like. He taught me a lot about mindset and the mind.
Hmm.
And I started my own business. I sold it after a few years. I had a long life dream that was living on a boat, sailing the world. So I sailed around for a couple of years. And during that period, it was actually not only a sailing trip, but it was a trip to a journey to awareness, self awareness. I had to, you know, make contact with myself again. I was completely lost after 20 years of really hard working, losing the money, all the shit what was going on in my life. I lost myself. I was deep down and depressed. So I had to take off. And it became a journey, sailing to Spain, Greece, Turkey, and most of all, sailing, to another version of me. And I read a lot of books again, and I started meditating. I met my wife, Cindy. That was about 13 years ago. And then one day she asked me, why did I never learn anything about, what you're talking about, the power of the mind, power of thoughts, all the books I had on my boat. She was reading the books as well. And she was really wondering, why don't we learn this in school?
Mm.
And she advised me, why don't you start teaching this? And then about 13 years, 12, 13 years ago, I started teaching about the mind, mindset, about meditation, about living a meaningful life. And that's what I still do up till now.
Well, that's a pretty darn good story. It sounds like you've read quite a bit. Even before your reinvention, you had read quite a bit.
Hmm.
And so that was maybe planting the beginning of the seed planting. And then life takes its course, things start melting down, and then you go back to that and it becomes your passion. In the premise of the book, you actually say this book will or can change your life. And you ask us to imagine, if you will, what would your best life look like? And you say it's about reprogramming yourself and really knowing and understanding that your mind is a lot more flexible than you may think it is. So, share a little bit about that for those of us who feel like we're just the way we are
Hmm.
and not sure what it even means to reprogram ourselves or what it takes. And as I said, later we'll get into the 12-step programs and some of the limiting things that keep us from doing that. But what's your sort of share this? What is this power that we have that we may not be aware of?
Well, that's a lot of questions. But most important is to question yourself. What does my best life look like? How do you want to live? What would you like to change in your daily life right now? Because your best life sounds like it's so huge. It's maybe too far away. But if you start with today, what would you like to change today in your daily life? How would you improve, or what can you do to improve the quality of your life today, this week? In little steps. And then you can create a vision of how you would like to live within 2 or 5 or maybe 10 years. And then it will give you direction where you want to go. And I think we all need direction. We need a kind of destiny. Where are we heading to in our lives? Because if you don't have this destiny or a goal, where are you going to? You will get lost in everyday life, in time. You have your family, you have your own life, you have your work, your business, and you get up every morning, you do your thing, you go to bed again, and so on and on and on. But if you really start to live more consciously and be more aware of why you do what you do, and more important, who you really are deep down inside, then you will get more understanding of why you make the decisions you make, why you behave the way you do. And that all together creates your life. So if we bring it back, it all starts in the mind. It starts with your mindset, with your thoughts. So if you start thinking about how that most ideal life for you looks like, you can make a plan, which I wrote down in the book.
Mhm.
But it's really important for us to better understand yourself. 20, 30 years ago, I was a completely different person than I am now. But now I know myself. I understand myself. I understand why I make choices, why I make my decisions, why I live the way I live. But 20 years ago, I had no idea. I was just doing things. I had to make money. I went to my job at the radio. I started my business. There were reasons. I had to make money. I had to pay my debts. But the real reason why I was doing what I did that time, the meaning I could give to my life, I had no clue.
Mm.
So I think for all of us, it's very important to start asking questions to ourselves to get a better understanding of who we are and why we think the way we think. Because if you understand your way of thinking, your mindset, you will better understand why you behave the way you do. And your behavior will eventually create the results in your daily life.
Well, for many people, I mean, that all sounds just, exactly like the right thing to do. But I think a lot of people don't have clarity about what they want to do. And so you say ask a lot of questions and you have a list of the questions, but I think, it may sound wonderful to say, I'm going to move to live on the island of Crete in Greece and become a writer and just write every day and play with my dogs. But I get there, let's say, and I'm not a very good writer, and my dog runs off every day. We have these fantasies, and how do we distinguish between the fantasies and clear thinking so that we can plant the seeds that will help us be who we want to be? What it like the mastering your mindset, you can go in so many different directions.
Yeah. Well, the vision is most important.
Hmm.
Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. So you have to visualize, you have to see where you want to go. But it's the same that if I say to you, I want to speak Spanish fluently, it's not going to happen overnight. It will take time. I have to start studying, beginner's lessons. And then maybe after 1 or 2 or 3 years, my Spanish will be up to a level that I can communicate with other people. And after 5 or 7 years, it might become fluently. So
Hmm.
it will take time. And I would say you have to be realistic, but you don't have to be realistic about your goals because I had pretty big goals. And most people told me when I was younger, it's impossible. Don't think that way. It will never happen. You cannot achieve that.
Yeah.
But it's more important to understand where you are. So your goal might be unrealistic today, but in a few years' time, when you head in the direction of your goal, it will become more realistic. You can compare it to climbing a mountain. If you climb a huge mountain and you're on ground zero, it's a long way. But if you're already halfway, it's just half of the road you have to walk. So it's very important that you understand where you are. When I started writing books, I wrote my first book in 2000 and well, I published it in 2014. It took me 3 years to write. I took lessons. I went to writing school in Amsterdam for 2 years. I couldn't write. And people in my friends, my family told me, how do you think you will be able to write a book? And why should anyone read some of your books? And I was like, that's a good question. So I took lessons for 2 years. I couldn't write. So if there's a big gap between where you're now and where you want to
Hmm.
go, you have to study, you have to learn, you have to grow as a person. That's personal development. And it can take a few years to reach a goal. That's true.
Hmm. Well, and you say, I mean, I guess in that sense, you're planting your seeds. You have to stick with it. Because I think what happens with a lot of people is you're not very good at something in the beginning, and that can totally derail you. It does not feel good to
No.
be a beginner at any age, probably over 40. It's frustrating, and you can become moody and emotional, and that can derail you. So there has to be some kind of bigger why that kind of keeps you going as you're getting frustrated with learning Spanish or learning how to write or not having any success that's validated by other
Yeah.
people. Like that, I think gets people derailed. If you've spent your whole life working in something and you've been successful, but now you're shifting and maybe you're not so good in the beginning, you're not
Most
getting
of the
any
time we
validation.
don't. No.
Some people, an agent may even say, sorry, this book isn't for us.
No. No,
What do
that's
you do?
true.
Yeah.
Well, it happened to me. There
Okay.
there was no publisher in the Netherlands, in Europe, that wanted to publish my book. So in the end, one of the publishers advised me, why don't you do it yourself?
Okay.
And that was, the golden advice, because if no one wanted to publish my book, well, at least I could do it myself. It would be not the easiest way. Many people warned me because self-publishing is not that easy, but I did. And I created my team. I found someone who founded a publishing company with me. So we created our own publishing company and we started selling books bit by bit, and after a while we sold a couple of books, and now after 12 years I sold over 1 million copies.
Mm,
So this
right.
this story doesn't mean to be the case for everyone. Not everyone will be a writer, not everyone will sell a lot of books. But what you just said, it's true. In the beginning, everything is hard.
Mm,
I started doing fitness. I was doing some workouts about 2 years ago. Didn't do nothing for, I think, 15 years. I was overweight. I was about 110 kilos. I was fat and ugly, and I could notice it wasn't really well for my health. And then 2 years ago, I started eating healthy, doing my daily exercises. I went to the gym. But the first time I went to the gym, it was awful. The first months were awful. It was a drama. It was painful. I didn't really like it. Other people staring at me like, see the fat guy, what is he doing here? But now, 2 years later, I feel fantastic. I feel healthy. I look way better. I'm 55 now. And I know I have to, work on myself.
mhm.
And I have another friend. He was a TV producer for a long time. We worked together for a long time when I had my TV production company. And then one day he quit and he started as a constructor. First, he did, little kitchens, bathrooms, little stuff. And now he has a big construction firm. And he started, I think he was 40, 43, with this new kind of life. So it doesn't mean if you're over 40 or maybe even older than 50, you cannot change the course of your life.
Right.
Yes, you can, but you have to follow a strategy. You have to improve your skills. You have to learn. But I think for a lot of people, there's so much more. There's so many more possibilities and opportunities if you really want to work on it.
Yeah.
And, motivation gets you started, but you have to get going. So you need self-discipline. And that's sometimes hard because we're all motivated and enthusiastic to start. But after a while, if it doesn't really work out the way we want,
Frustrated.
most people
Yeah.
quit.
Well, let's talk about the some of the, and again, we're going to get into like the 12 steps a little bit
Mhm.
later. I'm going to have you go through them, and also the 12 things that keep us from achieving what we want to achieve. But I want to understand how we work as human beings. When you talk about, you talked about planting the seeds and living with purpose. What about, the way that we're wired, your personal operating system? Where do your convictions come from? How do you stay present with them? And the way you talk about your mental wiring. We're all wired a certain way. My dog is wired a certain way. How do we change our wiring?
Well, first you have to ask yourself, do I want to change myself? If you're happy the way you are, just leave it that way. But to be honest, most people are not really well wired. We have in our daily life, we have a lot of problems. The older you get, the more trauma you have, the more history you have. So, what we do during life is gathering emotions, problems from the past, and it writes our story. It makes us who
Mm,
we are. So, it's writing our operating system. And it starts with your parents, when you're just a small child, you are being programmed a several way. Your dog as well. Not every dog is the same. So some people are more afraid of anything. Some people are not afraid. Some people are very brave, they dare to take risks. They always see the positive. They always look for solutions. Other people see a new problem in every solution. So you have a positive and a negative mindset, you can say. So first you have to understand how you are being wired. Do you have a positive mindset or do you have a more negative mindset? If you think you have limiting beliefs about money, about yourself, you have low self esteem, you don't really have self confidence, then you might be a bull in the game of other people. So other people will control your life. And that happens very often, and some people don't realize that they are being played by other people because they don't have enough leadership over themselves. They don't control themselves. They don't control their mindset because
Mm-hmm.
they're so involved in the outside world. We live in the outside world, the world we see around us, but we also have an inner world. And most of your life, our lives, happens in our inner world. It's our inner voice, it's the thoughts we have, the way we perceive the world. That's not reality, but we think it's our reality. So you create your own version of reality. It's the way you frame the world around you. And that's the way you think you are and the world just is. Like you said it before, this is just the way I am. Well, partly, but most of how you are is how you have created yourself or
Mm-hmm.
have been created by influences of other people. Jim Rohn used to say, you will be the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. And my mentor, Mr. Pena, always said, show me your friends and I will tell you your future. And he's right.
Interesting.
It's interesting, but it's true.
Yeah.
In my coaching sessions, I always ask people, who are the people you hang around with most and who have influence on you, on your mind? Because it's most your father, your mother, your parents, close friends, your relationship. You're being influenced. We're being influenced all the time. You read the news, you watch TV, the internet. We are being influenced with so many
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
there's so much going on in our mind that it's really hard to define what is real and what's not. And our mind, our subconscious mind, cannot make the difference between what is real in life and what is an illusion. So most of the time, we live in a kind of illusion we create ourselves. And if you start understanding that and then bring it back to your daily life and take it step by step, again, who am I? Why am I doing this? Why do I do the things I do? Why do I think the way I think? And then you start understanding more about yourself. And I also wrote down in my book, what are your personal values? Very
Mhm.
important to
Mhm.
also get a better picture of yourself
Yeah.
so that you have more control of your life.
Yeah. You wrote down, well, I first want to ask you before we get into your personal values and then the rules, because you wrote those down together and that
Yeah.
helps to build a picture of who you want to be in the world. But you talk about reprogramming your personal navigation system. What does that mean? Like, what does one have to do other than want to? But what do you do
Train.
to retrain? It's
You
just like
have to
you're going
train
to the
the
gym.
system.
You're saying
Yes.
there are, so
It's
are,
exactly the same.
okay.
Like we go to the gym for physical fitness, physical training, you have to do some mental fitness. You have to train, reprogram your mind. But the same with the body. First, you have to admit to yourself, I'm not living a healthy life. I'm too fat. I'm overweight. I need to do something. I have to eat less, ask better food, and I have to do my exercises. You can have a look in the mirror and think, well, I'm okay with it. Then nothing is going to change. And it's the same with the mind. If you think I'm completely satisfied with myself, in my relationship, I'm happy with the life I live, it's okay.
Mhm.
Because that's what we want to achieve in the end, a happy, meaningful life for yourself and the people you love around you. But
Yeah.
most of the time, we have problems. We can't sleep at night because we keep on thinking about problems, about what happened the other day, or we worry about what might happen tomorrow. So, everything I teach is about becoming more aware
Mhm.
of who you are and why do you do the things you do. Then you can decide, I want to change something. If
Mhm.
you have, let's say, limiting beliefs about money and you always lack money, and you say to yourself, money is not important, you know, it's always about money, but you don't have the money, and that creates a lot of problems in your life because, I don't know, you have too many bills, you cannot pay for medical health, you can't pay for your kids, your family. You have problems because you have too little money in your bank account or you make too little money. So, what's the problem with money? Most of the time, people with limiting beliefs about money push money away. It's
Mhm.
like, I don't like it, don't come to me, stay away. And it really, I can imagine if you listen to this podcast, you think, that's crap. But I know it works this way. I studied this for over 30 years. It's all about energy, or whether it's love or money, whatever you want to attract in your life, whatever you want to create, it's all about energy. So you have to create the energy that you can attract. You have to work for it, but you can make money. Don't push it away. It's the same if you have the feeling that you never find someone that will fit in your perfect relationship, it's because you are pushing away. You're not open for someone else. And
Mhm.
as long as you're completely locked in and you don't open the door for someone else, no one can enter your space, heart. And it's always related with something in our past.
Mhm.
All the limiting beliefs we have been created one day in our past. These are like anchors. It's like a ship. When a ship wants to stay in position, it drops the anchor. And what happens with us, human beings, when we have emotional situations in our life that really touches us. So it's grief, sadness, loss, pain, regret, that kind of negative emotions. Every time something happens in your life, you drop an anchor. Sometimes it's a little anchor, sometimes like a divorce or maybe the loss of a child or a parent or your significant other. It's a big anchor. And
Mhm.
we drop all these anchors, and after a while it might feel that maybe you recognize that you are stuck in life. You cannot move forward because your past is holding you back with all these anchors you have dropped in recent years. So you have to realize what happened and why, and then you can work on it to lift your anchors.
Mhm.
And lifting the anchors, that's the reprogramming.
Reprogramming, lifting the anchors that you are alluding here. Well, first of all, it's like asking yourself a series of questions so that you can really do self inquiry and understand where you are and where your anchors are. And that's almost sounds like a therapeutic process because sometimes you do need help doing that. But you were just talking about the law of attraction, which, we've heard about, and some people believe that, some people don't. What's how of doing the law of attraction?
Well, in my opinion, it's attracting and creating.
Hmm.
It's not just wishing and hoping and manifesting, and it will come one day, like in The Secret, you know?
Right, right, right.
I don't believe that it will just come without you helping to create it. So you are part of the creation. You are the creator. And if you start creating something and you have the right mindset, so you're radiating the vibes, the energy, you think of what you want, you can visualize it, you can see it, then you will notice that things are starting to move in your direction. You are being guided. You will get help from somewhere. I don't know. I believe in God. I believe in angels. I believe in all the stuff because I know what I create in my life. It's not only just because of me. I
Mm.
must be guided. There is some divine source helping us. I think all of us are being guided, but it's helping me for sure. I know. Of course, you have to believe in that. If you don't believe in angels and God and Santa Claus, it won't help you.
Well, you also studied Buddhism for a while.
Yes.
And how does that intersect with some of your beliefs in angels and God and
Mhm.
your just how does Buddhism integrate into your philosophy?
Well, if we go back to the Buddha, he said, "What you imagine, you become."
Mhm.
We become what we think of. That's one of his teachings long time ago. So in Buddhism, they also talk a lot about the mind. And the mind is like the engine, the creator, the big invisible creator. But in our Western lives, we are so distracted and we get so distracted by all the news and everything around us, social media, internet, well, we're so busy with so many things but ourselves. How many times a day, how many minutes a day do you take time for yourself just to be, to reconnect with yourself, to feel your inner self, just to be in the moment, feel your own awareness and be still without thoughts.
Mhm.
Just be in the moment, to enjoy whatever there is. Go out into nature, wonder about all the beautiful things on this planet in your life, but you have to see it. And we focus on so many things and we don't see the beauty in our lives. And what I learned when I was studying Buddhism is that I could be really stressed. I had a stressful life, I had a huge corporation, I was always stressed. I drank a lot, and I mean a lot, like, 2 bottles a day. I couldn't sleep because my mind was always running. It was a mental factory. I was
Mhm.
taking pills, everything. It was so unhealthy. So I knew I had to change something. And then my Buddhist teacher, he was really like sitting there. I was in a monastery and he was sitting there and he was just sitting and smiling. And I was like, guy, come on, man, do something. Let's talk. And he was really like, nothing. I was like, when are we going to do something? He would tell me, what we are doing now is very important.
Mhm.
Finally, you are practicing doing nothing. And I was like, weird guy.
Oh, no.
But it really changed my life,
Yeah, yeah.
doing nothing, meditating, taking a break, a moment for myself just to go out, disconnect from the outside world, disconnect from the noise and also the noise in my own mind. It changed my life. I'm so relaxed. I'm never stressed anymore. I really would give that present to everybody.
It might be helpful that you're living in Mallorca.
I think that's helpful. I have to admit that, yes.
Talk about and then we'll move into the keys to mastering your mindset, but I know, a gratitude mindset is a really big deal in your program, and I try to write gratitude in my journal every single morning, even if
Mhm.
it's the same thing that I wrote the day before. I try to really focus on that because I am also a big believer in gratitude. What role does that play in mastering your mindset?
I think it's one of the most important things in our lives. I wasn't living out of gratitude until my Buddhist teacher asked me, "What are you grateful for?" And I was like, what am I grateful for? God, whoa, what's this? And then I realized I never asked this question to myself before. And I was amazed. I was like, I'm, I thought I was grateful, but I wasn't really. When did I really thank someone? When did
Mm,
I thank my friends, my parents, other people for being there, helping me because I needed a lot of mental health help. And then I started being grateful and I went to my friends and I told them, I'm so grateful that you're always there for me. Even when I'm a pain in the ass, you were always there to help me, to listen to me. I went to my ex-wife and I showed her my appreciation that she always wanted to help me, be there for me. And I was so grateful. And the gratefulness absolutely was a big change in my life as well. And
mm,
even up till today, like you, I have my journal, although I don't write it down. But when I get up in the morning, and again, we live on a beautiful island, we face the mountains. So I get out of bed. I see the mountains, nature. It's so amazing. It's like God's creation. And I'm so thankful. Every day when I wake up, I say to myself, every day, I'm so thankful for this new day. I'm so thankful for all this beauty in life. And then I walk around in my garden and I'm thankful for the flowers and the trees and my dog and my wife and the life we live. And I think really to feel that gratitude within you, it changes your energy as well. It's a frequency of love, of
it is. Yes.
humbleness.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's true, but I think if you are honestly grateful, it will come back to you. You meet kind people. People are doing kind stuff to you just because. And I think it has all to do with being grateful, living out of love. I think we are all loving awareness. We're human beings are awareness and we're created out of love. But we have forgotten about that. But
Yes.
if you start to live from that loving awareness and you are more grateful, I know for sure for everybody who's listening now, your life will definitely change.
Well, Michael, when you get frustrated or triggered or derailed, what is your practice for re anchoring or for resetting your mood?
Yeah. Well, of course, people ask me, are you never angry? Never irritated? You never have a bad day? Of course. Well, not a bad day. I have some bad moments.
Hmm.
We have been rebuilding this property here for 3 years. It's a long time, 3 years. It would take two, became three in the end. So after a while, we got a little bit irritated because it was never ending. The Spanish way, it's always tomorrow, mañana. And in Spain, if you do reconstruction of houses, let's say almost everything that can go wrong goes wrong. So in the beginning, I could be a little angry sometimes, but I know my anger won't change the situation. And it's not that I accept everything and I laugh about it, but I know I have to focus on the outcome. What is the outcome I want? And that's what we have to create. So, what can I do? What can I contribute to be part of the solution instead of being angry, being irritated, because that's a negative emotion. It's a negative energy. So, when I'm negative, I'm not a very kind husband to my wife. I'm not very kind to my dogs and other people, and especially not to myself, and I feel bad about it. So, what I have changed in my life is if I feel these negative emotions, it will happen now and then, but it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 50 minutes. It's a state of being. So you have to break that state of being. It's a
Hmm.
choice. If you stay
It's a
angry,
choice.
if you
Yes.
stay negative, it's a choice, really, believe me. So if you are aware of that state of being, just do something else. Focus on something else. Go do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't focus on that what makes you angry or annoyed or irritated.
That
And
is
in
a
the
good.
beginning, that's hard. It
Yes,
takes practice,
it
but it
does.
works. It works.
All right, let's go to in the book, and I think this is actually, you talk about it throughout the book, but in the fourth part, you have a list of the keys to mastering your mindset. And I thought if you would, we could just go through each of them briefly, summarize what you think is most important. We have an audience that's sitting here, and many people are very happy with their lives. Other people are happy with their lives but want to make changes. Other people are not happy and they want to make changes. And so I thought maybe you could just kind of go through each of these, starting with the power of thought, which we've talked about a little bit, but then go through each of these.
Yeah. Well, Master Your Mindset is a very practical book. It's a bit like Stephen Covey's Seven Habits. It's very practical,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also it has to do with power of thought, Napoleon Hill. It has to do with a lot of what Deepak wrote, and also, of course, Wayne Dyer, because I read so much of his books. But it all starts with the mind. So first you have to master your mindset, and you have to work on yourself, personal mastery. It's about communication. How do you listen? How do you speak? How do you present yourself? It will take time to work on that. It's sometimes tough to speak in front of other people, or even in a conversation with someone else. Is what you say what you mean? And is what they hear also what you try to explain? So communication is very, very, very important to work on. It's a very important skill. But again, self-esteem, self-discipline, very important. So that's step 1 and 2, mastering your mindset, personal mastery. And then we go to goal setting. And goals can be small, you can have little goals or big goals. A goal can be to write a book, sail around the world, live on an island, build your own house, create a family. But it can also be small, like creating healthy food every day
Right. Right.
or having a walk for half an hour a day. That's a goal. Another goal could be just take 10 minutes for yourself every day doing nothing. Doing nothing is a very important goal every day to achieve. So you can have goals for the day, for this month, for this year. You can have a big dream, something you want to create, building a business, being, I don't know, an artist, a painter, writer, actor, you know, whatever you want, but you have to write it down. And if the goal is clear, it needs to be really clear. If people say, well, I'd like to live a life like you. Well, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe I might, you know, move to another country and what? So it takes time to really paint a picture that it's completely crystal clear. How do you want to live that life? Because in the end, it's about living your most ideal life. Write it down. How do you wake up? Where do you wake up? Who's around you where you are at that moment? How do you spend your day? What do you spend your time on? Very important. We all have 24 hours in a day, and we have time, but time passes, the clock is ticking, and this life has a deadline for all of us. So
Yeah.
don't waste your time.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Don't waste your time, because before you know it, you're 55 or you're 75, and then one day you walk you have a look back over your shoulder, and you look back on your life and you think, 75 or 80 years, what have I done with my time? Is a good question to ask yourself. What have I done with my time?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go on, because if you have your goals, small or big goals, doesn't matter, then you need an example, you need a role model. Success leaves clues. If
Mm-hmm.
if you can find other people who are already there where you want to go, just copy them. You can learn from other people. You don't have to reinvent everything yourself. You need other people, because you cannot do it all by yourself. You need a dream team. And the
Hmm.
team can be one or two persons, or maybe you need a big team. Depends on building a house is a good example. If you are going to build a house, you need an architect that can draw down your creation you have in your mind, the house, what kind of house. Then the architect will draw the house. Then the constructor can start building. Then you need, carpenters, painters. You need materials. You need tools. Then you can create your dream team, the people you need to achieve your goal. What also helps is visualization. So really, like Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind. So you really have to see where you want to go. It's not just, we're building a house and when it's finished, you're really surprised of the end result. No, no, no. We know what we are going to do. So we have a roadmap. We have a plan. Step by step, we try to build what we want to build, and we know in the end what we will have created. So visualization, affirmation, they can help,
Hmm.
especially if you have to work on yourself, if you have low self-esteem, low self-confidence. You can it's auto suggestion, like Napoleon Hill wrote down in Think and Grow Rich. You can say to yourself, I love myself. I really love myself. I'm worth it. I'm strong. I wrote down many affirmations in Master Your Mindset, which you can use. You can create your own as well. I used them for a long period. I think for about 20 or 30 years, I did my affirmations almost every day before I went to bed, when I
Hmm.
was going to bed, just 5 minutes before sleep. If you repeat it after again, your subconscious mind will hear it and feel it as if it is real.
Hmm.
So that's also a way of reprogramming part of your subconscious mind with affirmations.
Yeah.
Well, if you go through with the steps, you have the dream team,
Hmm.
you have the role model. Also, maybe you might need a coach or a mentor to help you. Then,
Hmm.
what's also very important is that you have to do whatever it takes to achieve what you want,
Right. You say that. Do whatever it takes. Yeah.
whatever it takes. And that's more than you think. If you really want something, chances are pretty high that you can achieve it if you do everything what is needed and even a bit more. And stay focused on achieving your goal.
Yeah.
And you can imagine if you have, let's say, 10 or 20 goals, it's hard to keep focus. But of course, if I have, like, for example, if my goal is to write another book, that's
Right.
that's a huge goal. I spend a lot of time in that. But my other daily goals are healthy food, doing my exercises. I walk for about an hour a day. So I have daily goals, but still my main goal this year is writing another book. So that means if I write another book, there's no time to do, let's say, 200 um, theater shows.
Hmm.
Because if I'm in the theater night after night after night, there's no time, no free creation space to write another book. There's no time to write.
Yeah.
So you have to decide, what do you spend your time on? Focus on the few, not the many.
Yes.
That's important to realize.
What are some of the limiting factors? So you have a whole list of, it's just trying to find them. And maybe they're the reverse of what you just said in terms of the key things, but lack of a concrete goal, lack of targeted attention, fear, I think is a really big one, starting something, indecisiveness, lack of self discipline, lack of passion. I feel like these are all very common among people who are, you get a little bit stuck because change is so complicated and it can be scary. Maybe it's not complicated, but it's scary, scary
It can be
sometimes.
scary. Of course, it can be scary, but then don't change. If you're in a relationship and you're both very unhappy,
Mm,
well, just be very comfortable but unhappy in your relationship and waste the rest of your time, the rest of your life, and one day you will die unhappy. That's it,
well,
and no one else to blame but yourself.
You're saying you always have a choice. That's basically it. But some people like, and then, maybe what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with staying consistent, with getting out of their routines or
Yeah,
their
what are you afraid
habits?
of?
This is very, yeah. So is
It's
that
a
the
good
question?
question.
What are you afraid of? Yeah.
What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Fear is really holding us back.
Yes. Yeah.
For well, let's say for some people, it's a big barrier. It's a real obstacle in life. For some people, it's just, like we can get over this. There's always fear,
Yeah.
but what can you do to overcome your fears? Fear is false expectations appearing real. Most of the fears we face and we experience are being created in our own mind. Most of the fears are just thoughts.
Mm.
Not all, If
Yes.
you're in the hospital or your child is in the hospital and there's something serious going on, and you have to wait for the doctor, that's not a kind of fear I mean. But if you are being afraid that what might happen if it doesn't work, well, make it work. Work harder. You
Yeah.
can feel, when I started doing public speaking, I went on stage and sometimes I was really lousy. It was really bad. And my wife, she was always in the back of the venue. Quit, stop. It's really bad today. Sometimes it was good,
Yeah.
sometimes it was bad.
Yeah.
But just by doing it, you can improve yourself.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people, they keep on practicing, but not really practicing. You have to do it.
Hmm.
Just go out there. Do
Yeah.
it. Don't be afraid to fail. What is the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah. Embarrassment.
You can grow. You can grow.
Right. Well, you have a list. I think these are almost mantras and maybe even affirmations, but
Mhm.
you call them your personal rules. And I think these are good lines for people to remember. I am the result of the way that I think. I take responsibility for my actions. I am the result of the choices I make. And for you, you wrote, I live and eat to be healthy. But you wrote down some of those examples of those are based on your values and what you want to create in your life. Those are what you're calling rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important that you have your own rules. Like we have rules in traffic. You know,
Hmm.
imagine there would be no rules in traffic, no traffic lights, no signs, no nothing, like in India. It will become a mess because we don't know what to do.
Right.
So I think we all need rules in our lives, and
Hmm.
you are the one who can create most of the rules for yourself. It's like a blueprint.
Yes.
It's the blueprint of your life. And if you know what are the rules, then you know how you want to live. And sometimes you hear people say, well, I'm always going over the edge. All other people keep on pushing me. And that's because they don't have rules. They don't know where to say up till here
Hmm.
and no further.
Yeah.
Because these are my rules. For most people, it's always hard to say no. And I've learned it's better to say no first. You can always change it into a yes. But every time you say yes, you make a promise. Can you help me? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. And we already have so much stress, and then we say yes to everybody, to everything, and we pile up all the stress we have, and we cannot, keep our promises, and we create our own problems. So it's better. And maybe you think it sounds unfriendly, but if people ask you something for your help, think about it, but sometimes say no. Not that you want to be unpolite or unfriendly, but sometimes you need time for yourself. So, no, I cannot do that because I have something else to do or
Yeah.
I need time for myself.
Yeah. You're setting boundaries.
Boundary,
So
that's the word.
yeah. So I think this is going to be my last question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who feels stuck or overwhelmed by their current situation,
Hmm.
and has heard everything that you've said today, but still feels a little dug in, what would that advice be?
Well, obviously, read the book.
Okay, read the book.
Yeah, because, if you hear it in a podcast,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
even if you I think if you read a book once, you see a lot of information, a lot of words, but it's really hard to really understand the message. So my advice always is to read a book twice, underline, mark,
Yeah,
make your
study.
own, study it, really study the book. And I think most important is well, if you really feel overwhelmed, take a step back,
Mm,
because then first you need some time for yourself. You have to ease down, peace of mind, create some tranquility in your life first. Because if everything is chaotic in your mind, in your life, it will be chaotic. You have to step back for a while. Then, you can do some meditation, breathing exercises, but just take some time for yourself
mhm,
to align your thoughts, because it's if the thoughts go everywhere, you have no idea where to start. So first try to ease down a little bit, then start to ask questions, clear questions, to get clear answers about where you are now at the moment, and try to keep it as simple as possible. What do you think is your main problem today? What is the main problem you want to solve first now? Then write down all the options. What can I do to solve this problem? What is really the problem? Also, that's a good question. What is really the problem? Because we create lots of stories in our mind, but what is really the problem, Without all the things you add to it, break it down to what it really is. Keep it simple,
mm.
make it clear as possible, and take time to answer these questions. These are serious life questions. They need time to be solved. It's not that you can write down 10 of these life questions and answer them within 10 minutes. No, no. Sometimes it takes days or weeks or even years to really solve the problems you face in your life. But you have to start here, now, where you are at this moment, with the most easy, simple questions, and ask yourself, what do I want to change in my daily life now?
Perfect. Thank you. It
Thank
has
you.
been such a pleasure and joy to hear your wisdom today. Your book was great,
Thank
and
you
I
so
will let
much.
people know how to buy it. And
Thank you.
yes, very grateful for you being with us today. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.